Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we unpack complex topics to give you a shortcut to being truly well-informed. Today, we're exploring a critical, often unsung system that works tirelessly behind the scenes: human milk banking. It's a field that has, well, grown exponentially in importance, and it's absolutely vital for healthcare professionals, especially you preparing for the IBCLC exam and families to understand. You already know the profound, irreplaceable value of human milk for infant health and development. It's undeniably the gold standard, right? But a crucial question emerges when a mother's own milk is unavailable or insufficient, particularly for those tiny, medically vulnerable infants. How do we ensure they still receive its vital benefits? That's precisely what we're diving into today. Our deep dive today is all about human milk banking. So what exactly is it?
Well, at its core, donor human milk banks are specialized nonprofit organizations. Their mission is to meticulously recruit and screen mothers who have milk in excess of their own baby's needs, or sometimes who are willing to express specifically for donation. And, quite movingly, bereaved mothers may also choose to donate. They often find it a profoundly helpful part of their grieving process.
That's incredibly poignant.
It really is. These banks then managed the entire process, from collection and rigorous screening through precise processing, which includes that absolutely crucial step of pasteurization to secure storage, and finally, equitable distribution of that donated milk to vulnerable infants.
Okay. And it's essential, I think, for us to clarify a really important distinction right from the start here. Pasteurized donor human milk, or PDHM, and the entire complex operation of donor milk banks. That's profoundly different from how a mother handles and stores her own milk for her healthy infant at home, right?
Absolutely. That distinction is paramount. The level of medical necessity, the sheer scale of operation, and the stringent safety protocols, they just drive completely different standards.
Yeah.
And it brings us to the fundamental question: why is donor human milk so incredibly important? It's truly a global medical imperative. You look at major health authorities worldwide, the WHO, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Canadian Pediatric Society. They all explicitly include donor milk in their infant feeding statements. It's seen as a vital, medically appropriate alternative when a mother's own milk isn't available.
So it's not just a recommendation, it's
a powerful global consensus.
Yeah.
Driven by really compelling evidence.
So it's not just a nice to have then, it's a crucial medical tool.
Precisely. The evidence is overwhelming that not providing human milk, especially to premature or sick infants, poses significant health risks. In fact, in many neonatal intensive care units, the NICUs, the use of pasteurized donor milk has really become the recognized standard of care when a mother's own milk isn't accessible. What's fascinating here, I think, is how donor milk banks essentially serve as this vital bridge, ensuring the highest attainable standard of health for these infants.
A bridge, I like that.
Yeah, and this aligns perfectly with principles like Article 24 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which recognizes every child's right to the highest attainable standard of health.
Okay. And beyond that overarching principle, what are the actual clinical benefits we see on the ground?
Oh, the clinical benefits are incredibly well documented. Human milk, and that includes PDHM, has proven advantages over formula, particularly for ill and high-risk infants. We're talking about significantly decreased morbidities and mortalities.
Wow.
It plays a critical role in reducing the incidence of severe conditions like necrotizing enterocolitis, NEC.
Which is just devastating.
It's a devastating bowel disease, often fatal for preemies. It also reduces late-onset sepsis, LOS, and bronchopulmonary dysplasia, BPD.
And beyond the direct health benefits for the infant, does this translate to broader impacts?
Yeah.
Maybe economically.
It absolutely does. And this brings us to a compelling economic argument for healthcare systems. By avoiding these very costly and potentially lifelong health complications, NEC, LOS, BPD, through the use of PDHM, healthcare systems actually realize significant financial benefits.
Right, because those treatments are incredibly expensive.
Exactly. It's a health investment that genuinely pays dividends in the long run.
So what does all this mean for you? Listening in, maybe preparing for your IBCLC exam, navigating these complex choices with families, particularly when it comes to advocating for and understanding donor human milk. Our mission for today's deep dive is to provide you with a tailored, in-depth resource specifically designed for that IBCLC exam prep. We're going to cover, well, pretty much everything. From the historical roots of milk sharing to the rigorous modern procedures, the ethical considerations, and your very specific and crucial role as an IBCLC. And yes, we'll be weaving in exam-focused bullet points, key definitions, and we'll wrap up with a discussion of 10 IBCLC-style, case-based multiple-choice questions designed to test your application and understanding, not just rote recall. Ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's start our journey through time, exploring the fascinating evolution of donor milk use. It wasn't always so formalized, was it?
Not at all. For centuries, really. Until the early 1900s, if a mother couldn't breastfeed, the primary alternatives were wet nurses or milk donated informally, from friends, relatives.
Just within the community.
Exactly. Very local, community-based arrangements. And of course, they had their own early, informal screening practices. Wet nurses were often verbally vetted for diseases, healthy lifestyles. People would look at the health of their own children as a kind of proxy for the quality of their milk. It was a system built on trust and, well, necessity.
Right. But then things started to shift dramatically around the turn of the 20th century.
They really did. Between 1900 and 1950, we saw this significant cultural shift. You had advancements in science and refrigeration making artificial feeding products, often based on modified animal milk, more viable. And crucially, safer than previous attempts, which often proved fatal, frankly. This, coupled with really aggressive marketing from burgeoning companies like Nestle, and a cultural shift where physician-led infant feeding became the norm, led to a substantial decline in both breastfeeding and human milk use.
And the companies were quite savvy about partnering with the medical community, weren't they?
Oh, very. Proprietary companies quickly realized the value. By the 1930s, the American Medical Association even published specific advertising guidelines for infant foods. Physicians often provided instruction sheets supplied by the formula manufacturers themselves.
Wow.
Yeah, it effectively shifted infant feeding from that traditional communal domestic sphere where women supported each other to a more sort of scientific medical world heavily favoring artificial feeding.
It's interesting, though, how those two seemingly opposing trends, the rise of formula and the birth of formal milk banking, actually emerged around the same time.
That's a great point. The world's first milk bank was established in Vienna, Austria in 1909.
Wow, that early.
Yeah. Just a year later, 1910, the first in the United States was founded in Boston, Massachusetts. And Dr. Marie-Lise Kaiser's guidelines in Germany in 1919 also played a significant role in shaping early European practices.
So what drove the growth of these early banks?
It was really driven by advances in healthcare that led to the survival of smaller and sicker premature infants who just desperately needed human milk. By the 1940s, the American Academy of Pediatrics had even developed its first guidelines for donor milk banking. And by the early 1980s, we had about 30 milk banks in the U.S. and 23 in Canada. They were dispensing milk either raw or pasteurized, depending on the bank's preference, primarily for infants with critical medical needs.
But then came a pretty significant setback in the mid-1980s. What happened there?
Yeah, that was a tough period. Awareness grew rapidly about the potential transmission of serious viruses like cytomegalovirus, CMV, and especially human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, through human milk.
Right, the AIDS epidemic was emerging.
Exactly, and that, combined with the continued aggressive promotion of specialty preterm formulas that promised to replace human milk, led to a dramatic decline. Many milk banks closed. It reached an all-time low, with only 7 remaining in North America by the late 1990s. It was a real crisis of confidence and safety.
So the need for standardization became absolutely paramount. You couldn't have this variability anymore.
Couldn't have it, exactly. To address these critical safety concerns, it became crystal clear that rigorous donor screening, including serum screening, blood tests, and mandatory keep processing of all donor milk, were absolutely essential. This urgent realization directly led to the founding of the Human Milk Banking Association of North America, HMBNA, in 1985.
HMBNA, okay.
Yeah. Their core goal was to standardize milk banking operations across the continent, develop robust, evidence-based procedures, ensure safety and quality, and essentially rebuild trust in the whole system.
And that standardization, it really paid off, didn't it?
Absolutely.
Because we've seen this dramatic resurgence of milk banking since the early 2000s. It seems fueled by increasing research, emphasizing the profound benefits of human milk for preterm infants.
That's exactly it. The evidence just kept mounting.
And the numbers are staggering.
Yeah.
To give you a sense of this growth, HMBNA distributed roughly 500,000 ounces in the year 2000. By 2012, that number had leaped to 2.5 million ounces.
Wow.
And get this, by 2023, it reached a remarkable 10 million ounces. mostly within hospital and ICUs.
It's incredible. It's a testament to the power of evidence and collective action, really.
Now, if we zoom out even further, we see a truly global reach in donor milk banking today. It's not just North America.
Oh, no, it's a worldwide network. There were 756 nonprofit milk banks operating globally as of 2020, spanning Africa, Asia, Australia, the Americas. It's everywhere.
It's remarkable to hear how widespread it is.
Yeah.
And Brazil, in particular, stands out, right? I've heard they're quite advanced.
Brazil is absolutely a pioneering and leading model. They boast over 228 milk banks.
228.
Yeah. Their approach is truly integrated into their national breastfeeding promotion efforts. They have national standards, a national human milk bank network coordinated by IBCLC, and they even have these unique public service integrations like firefighters receive 40 hours of breastfeeding education and clinical training as part of their EMT training.
Firefighters? Seriously?
Seriously, including time in a donor milk bank. And in some states, they actually collect milk from donors daily.
That's amazing.
Letter carriers for the Postal Service are also trained to promote and support breastfeeding. Brazil even champions International Donors Day on May 19th each year.
Wow. It really makes you wonder if our local firefighters would be up for a milk collection route, doesn't it?
Chuckles. It's a truly integrated vision, isn't it?
It really is. That's a fascinating example of how deeply ingrained it can become within a society. Beyond Brazil, we see the formation of regional organizations too, like the European Milk Banking Association, EMBA, founded in 2010.
Right. EMBA now has 31 country members and 282 active banks.
And the Human Milk Banking Association of South Africa, established in 2009.
And we also have organizations like PATH, a global nonprofit funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, playing a vital role. They're working to expand milk banking in resource-poor areas and led the development of the WHO Donor Human Milk Guidelines.
But as widespread as these efforts are, you mentioned cultural beliefs can sometimes pose challenges.
Yes. Here's where it gets really interesting. How cultural beliefs, even those rooted in deep traditions of family connection, can profoundly impact healthcare practices like milk banking. It requires incredibly nuanced approaches.
How so?
Well, for example, in many Muslim countries, the tradition of milk kinship poses a significant cultural and religious challenge. Consuming milk from the same mother, even if the baby isn't biologically hers creates a bond, a kinship, that prohibits future marriage between those families.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So this has understandably restricted milk bank development in these regions, making universal adoption quite complex. You can't just roll out the same model everywhere.
That's a really complex cultural overlay. It makes you realize how nuanced global health initiatives need to be, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just about the science.
Not at all. It's about the societal fabric. Absolutely. Pilot projects, like one in Turkey, have attempted to navigate these traditions by focusing on specific practices like identifying the sex of infants, limiting the number of sharers, ensuring donor-recipient identities are known. However, it's important to note that disease transmission prevention practices aren't routinely applied in these more informal, culturally adapted settings, which highlights the ongoing challenge.
Right.
Globally, the emergence of the Global Alliance of Milk Banks and Associations, or GAMBA, has been vital. It provides a platform for milk banks worldwide to discuss best practices and address common challenges, something that became especially highlighted during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay. And for your exam, here's a key figure to remember. The Human Milk Banking Association of North America, HMBNEA, founded in 1985. Their crucial goal was standardizing donor milk banking operations across North America, developing those rigorous evidence-based standards that are updated regularly and used globally.
That standardization is truly paramount to the safety we're about to dig into.
Right, let's talk about the gatekeepers of safety, the donor screening criteria. This is absolutely critical for your IBCLC exam because it's the very first line of defense in ensuring the safety and integrity of donor milk.
It really is. It's a comprehensive, multi-layered screening process designed to be incredibly thorough.
So what does that actually look like when someone wants to donate?
Okay, so when a prospective donor first contacts a milk bank, there's an initial conversation, sort of a general overview. This is where the bank outlines the donation requirements, explains the types of screening involved, gives basic handling and storage guidelines. If they wish to proceed, they move to complete an initial questionnaire, maybe over the phone, in person, online. This is then followed by much more detailed forms covering extensive health and lifestyle issues. And crucially, they must provide consent for the milk bank to contact both their and their infant's primary healthcare providers for verification.
So multiple checks.
Multiple checks, yeah, it's key.
So generally, who makes an ideal donor then?
Generally, a healthy lactating woman who meets the strict requirements for blood donation and isn't taking contraindicated medications, that's the profile. And it's worth noting again, as we mentioned, bereaved mothers are eligible, and many report finding the process deeply therapeutic, a way to honor their child.
Right. Now, a cornerstone of safety and a definite must-know for IBCLCs is the mandatory serological testing. What does that involve?
This is huge. Donors undergo blood tests for a range of serious infections. HIV-1 and HIV-2.
Okay.
HTLVI and HTLV-2, which is human T-cell lymphotropic virus. Hepatitis B, specifically the surface antigen, hepatitis C, and syphilis.
That's quite a list.
It is. And donors are also typically screened to be CMV negative for bank milk, that's cytomegalovirus. It's especially crucial for premature infant recipients because of the virus's potential for serious neurologic consequences. Although it's worth noting, Holder pasteurization effectively destroys CMV anyway.
Right, but better safe than sorry.
Exactly. And the milk bank usually covers the cost of these screenings, which is important for removing a potential barrier for donors.
Good point. So on the flip side, who doesn't qualify? What are those key exclusion criteria that you absolutely need to nail down for your exam?
Okay, key exclusions. Donors are excluded, either temporarily or permanently, for several reasons. Recent transfusions or transplants, if they've received a blood transfusion, blood products, an organ, or tissue transplant within the last 12 months, that's a no.
Okay.
Substance use is another major one. Regular use of more than 2 ounces of hard liquor, or its equivalent, in a 24-hour period. Any use of illegal drugs or tobacco products.
But what about medications?
Medications and supplements are also closely scrutinized. Regular use of most over-the-counter medications or systemic prescriptions will typically lead to exclusion.
Most. Are there exceptions?
Yeah, the main exceptions usually include replacement hormones like thyroid hormone and some specific birth control hormones, but generally regular meds are out. Also, the use of megadose vitamins or pharmacologically active herbal preparations can be disqualifying.
Even herbs, wow.
Yeah, if they're pharmacologically active. Dietary restrictions are also considered. Total vegetarians or vegans who do not supplement their diet with essential vitamins. And of course, certain medical histories, a history of hepatitis, any systemic disorders, chronic infections like HIV, HTLV, tuberculosis. Interestingly, even silicone breast implants are on the exclusion list.
Really? Even though there's no evidence of harm?
Right. No evidence of harm, but it's a precautionary measure included in the guidelines.
Okay. So, as an exam point, thinking about application, if a prospective donor reports daily use of an over-the-counter allergy medication, she would likely be deferred, right?
That's a very likely deferral, yes, based on the regular use of over-the-counter medications criteria.
Got it. Beyond the initial screening, what about ongoing monitoring? Does the bank stay in touch?
Absolutely. HMB-A banks maintain ongoing, regular contact with active donors. They're encouraged to report any changes in their health status immediately. Temporary deferrals can also occur, say following consumption of certain medications, alcohol, or during short-term medical conditions like a cold or flu. Donors are advised to discard milk expressed in the 24 hours prior to and during an acute illness.
Makes sense.
And regarding the quality of the milk over time, while not an immediate exclusion, after about 6 to 8 months of lactation, the milk bank might evaluate a donor's contributions. They want to confirm sufficient protein and caloric content, especially for those high-risk recipients. It's about ensuring the milk remains optimally beneficial as the composition naturally changes.
And some banks take extra steps for integrity.
Yes, some commercial for-profit banks like Prolacta Bioscience and Metalac even use advanced integrity checks, things like testing for bovine protein to ensure it hasn't been adulterated, or cross-matching donor DNA to confirm authenticity.
That's incredibly thorough. Okay, moving on from donor screening, let's look at the next crucial step. From donor to bank, the collection and storage procedures at home. Donors have important responsibilities here, right?
Absolutely. The safety chain starts at home. Donors are thoroughly educated on the fundamental principles of good hand hygiene and using clean, not necessarily sterile for home use, but thoroughly cleaned breast pump equipment. This often includes referencing FDA guidelines for breast pump cleaning.
And labeling is key too, I imagine.
Crucial. Each container of express milk must be clearly marked with the donor's name and a door identification number. along with the precise time and date of expression. This detailed labeling is absolutely essential for traceability later on.
For home storage, how should the milk be kept before it's transported? What are the specifics there?
Okay, storage. Donated milk is stored frozen. The standard is at or below -18 degrees C, which is -0.4 degrees Fahrenheit. It needs to be in a home freezer that's consistently cold enough to keep ice cream hard. That's often the guideline given.
The chuckles. Practical advice.
Yeah. This is where milk accumulates until there's enough volume ready for transfer to the bank. And container choice matters significantly for preserving the milk's immunologic function.
What's preferred?
Glass or rigid polypropylene plastic containers are preferred. Soft polyethylene bags, those common milk storage bags, are generally discouraged for donation.
Why is that?
Mainly due to an increased risk of spillage, which is heartbreaking, and potential for fat adherence to the plastic, which can affect the nutritional content. There are also concerns regarding bisphenol A, BPA, release from hard polycarbonate plastics, so those are typically avoided too. Stick to glass or polypropylene.
Good to know. Once collected and properly stored, how does it physically get to the milk bank? What are the logistics?
There are various ways. Donors might deliver milk directly to the bank themselves. They might ship it via overnight express, or drop it off at designated community depots, like a local hospital or clinic. And some banks employ incredibly creative solutions for collection. We mentioned the volunteer motorcycle clubs in New York.
The milk riders.
Exactly. Or extensive networks like the Nationwide Association of Blood Bikes in the UK. They're amazing.
So the bank helps coordinate this?
Yes. Banks provide detailed instructions, specialized shipping containers, and often cover the shipping expenses. They use dry ice or frozen gel packs in insulated coolers to maintain those crucial sub-zero temperatures during transit. And there's usually temperature monitoring during transport or immediately upon arrival at the bank to ensure the cold chain wasn't broken.
Okay, so for an exam scenario question, a donor is preparing milk for shipment to a milk bank. What is the single most important consideration for maintaining milk quality during this step?
The most important consideration. Maintaining consistent freezing temperatures throughout transport. That cold chain integrity is paramount.
Got it. Now for the transformation. The processing procedures at the milk bank. This is where raw donor milk becomes pasteurized donor human milk, PDHM, truly ready for a vulnerable infant. What happens first?
Okay, so upon arrival at the milk bank, the raw frozen milk is carefully unpacked, weighed, and entered into a meticulous tracking system, often using barcodes for precision.
Tracking every step.
Every step. It's then carefully thawed. Typically, this happens in a refrigerator overnight or sometimes at room temperature for a few hours before being refrigerated to complete the process gently. Then, in North American HMBNA banks, the thawed milk is typically pooled.
Pooled, meaning mixed together.
Yes, mixed from multiple donors, usually 4 to 6 donors per batch.
Why do they do that?
The main reason is to standardize the nutritional composition, things like protein and fat content of the final product. It helps ensure a more consistent product for the recipients. This pooled milk is then poured into individual bottles, ready for the next step.
Is pooling done everywhere?
Interestingly, no. In Britain, for instance, pooling is generally avoided due to the theoretical risk of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, CJD, or mad cow disease. It's a very theoretical risk, but they take that precaution.
That's fascinating. So pooling is primarily for standardization in North America.
Primarily, yes. And it's a huge benefit for sick or premature infants whose nutritional needs are often very specific and require consistency. Some banks even employ targeted pooling.
Targeted pooling?
Yeah, where they specifically combine milk to optimize certain nutrient content, like protein or calories, for particular recipients based on their needs. Or they might pool preemie milk separately. That's milk from mothers of infants born at or before 36 weeks gestation, collected within the first 4 weeks postpartum. This milk naturally has higher protein and mineral content, which is a huge benefit for premature infants' unique growth requirements.
That's really smart, tailoring it like that. Okay, now the big one, Holder pasteurization. You said this is where the safety transformation truly takes place. It sounds like a delicate balance.
It is. It's a delicate balance of heat and time. Holder pasteurization is the internationally recommended standard for milk banks. The milk is rapidly feeded, usually in a shaking water bath or a dedicated human milk pasteurizer, to precisely 62.5 degrees Celsius. That's 144.5 Fahrenheit.
Okay, 62.5 C.
And it's held at that exact temperature for exactly 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Then, immediately following this, it's rapidly cooled down to 4 degrees Celsius, or 39.2 Fahrenheit, using chilled water or an ice slurry.
How do they ensure the temperature is accurate throughout the batch?
Great question. They use a control bottle. It contains the same volume of milk or water as the batch bottles, and it's fitted with a calibrated thermometer. This control bottle is placed centrally among the other bottles in the pasteurizer. This ensures accurate temperature monitoring for the whole batch. The core temperature of the milk absolutely must not exceed 63 degrees Celsius.
So what does that precise heating and cooling do to the milk's components? What's the key headline here for an IBCLC preparing for the exam?
Okay, the key takeaway is this. Holder pasteurization is highly effective at inactivating bacteria and viruses, including CMV and HIV. That's the safety part. But yes, it does lead to some changes. You'll see reductions in water-soluble vitamins, like vitamin C by maybe up to 35%, thiamine by around 25%. Some key proteins and enzymes are also reduced. Lysozyme loses about 24%, lactoferrin can lose over 50%, IgG about 34%. Enzymatic activity is definitely affected.
Right.
But, and this is really important for you to remember, it notably retains most saccharides, the overall lipid content, and crucially, generally shows no significant loss of IgA.
IgA is key.
IgA is a critical immune factor, especially for gut health. So while some delicate components are reduced, the milk's core immunological power, especially IgA, remains largely intact. That makes it profoundly beneficial despite the processing.
That's a vital distinction. Okay, after pasteurization, what's the final quality assurance step? Is it ready to go then?
Not quite yet. There's one more crucial safety check, bacteriological screening. A random sample from each and every batch is cultured in the lab to confirm the absence of any bacterial growth after pasteurization.
And the milk waits.
The milk waits. It is never dispensed until negative test results are received. That process typically takes about 48 hours. If very low contamination is somehow detected, the milk is retested. If bacterial growth persists on the retest, the entire batch is discarded. No risks are taken, period.
Great. And once it's finally cleared, how is it stored at the milk bank itself?
Right, storage at the bank. Raw and processed donor milk are always stored in separate, designated freezers. No chance of cross-contamination.
Smart.
These freezers are continuously monitored, 247, and equipped with audible and visible alarms to ensure the temperature consistently remains at or below -18 degrees Celsius or 8x4 Fahrenheit. They're often connected to security systems, too, to protect against power failures. Processed milk is stored in batches, meticulously labeled with expiration dates, which are based on the original expression date from the donor, and carefully scanned out to recipients via a computer system. This ensures proper inventory management and safe, traceable distribution.
All of this requires incredibly meticulous record keeping and quality oversight, I imagine. It sounds like a huge logistical operation.
It is. Milk banks maintain detailed and secure records, both computer and written, for all stages. Donor screening, milk processing, dispensing, contact with donors, contact with recipients, everything. Records are typically kept for at least 10 years, or sometimes until all recipients reach 21 years of age, ensuring long-term traceability if needed.
And they practice for problems.
They do. HMBNA standards mandate annual mock recalls. This ensures each bank's recall process is efficient and actually workable if, heaven forbid, it's ever needed. Any actual recalls are reported immediately to the relevant regulatory bodies, like the FDA or Health Canada, and to the HMBNA board. HMBNA also requires each member bank to undergo an annual accreditation process, alternating between on-site audits and self-assessments, often incorporating reviews by informed third parties like health department officials. It's an incredibly robust, multi-layered system designed for maximum safety.
Okay, let's talk about the medical marvel that is donor human milk, its proven benefits and clinical indications. For IBCLCs listening, this is truly the why it matters section, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. This is the core justification for all that rigorous processing we just discussed. The majority of infants receiving donor milk are premature, especially those in NICUs. In many countries, they are often the sole recipients.
And the benefits for them are significant.
Hugely significant. This is where the rubber meets the road, clinically speaking. The evidence is overwhelming. Providing human milk, whether mother's own or donor, is a critical intervention that directly improves infant survival and reduces severe complications.
That's NEC.
Exactly. Human milk, including PDHM, significantly reduces the risk of necrotizing enterocolitis, NEC, that devastating bowel disease in preemies. It also decreases the incidence of late-onset sepsis, LOS, bronchopulmonary dysplasia, BPD, and even retinopathy of prematurity, ROP.
And shorter hospital stays, too.
Studies strongly suggest that. Infants supplemented with PDHM tend to have shorter lengths of stay in the NICU, which contributes to better outcomes and, as we touched on, significant cost savings for the healthcare system.
It's clear how beneficial it is for premature infants. But beyond prematurity, does donor milk have broader medical applications?
Yeah.
Are there other instances where it's a vital tool?
Yes, absolutely. Its use is expanding. More and more hospitals are offering PDHM for full-term infants, but with specific medical indications. For instance, hypoglycemia, low blood sugar. We have the case study of baby M, a term infant with hypoglycemia. When the mother's own colostrum wasn't enough initially, baby M received PDHM by spoon, and it successfully stabilized their blood glucose.
Wow.
It's also used for infants with congenital anomalies. There's limited but growing data suggesting benefits for infants with conditions like congenital heart disease. Remember baby D, the term infant with a congenital heart defect who developed chylothorax after surgery.
Right, needing reduced fat milk.
Exactly. Chylothorax requires milk with minimal long-chain fatty acids. The milk bank was able to defat the mother's own milk, and they can also stock reduced fat donor milk specifically for such cases.
So it's not just about critical illness in preemies. It's about highly tailored nutritional support when a baby has very specific needs, even if full term.
Precisely. PDHM is also used for infants with formula allergy, severe ones, leading to bleeding from the bowel or even anaphylactic shock or other severe feeding intolerances. And for infants with failure to thrive or poor growth, who simply do not thrive without human milk and whose mothers can't provide enough supply, it can be a lifesaver.
Like baby A.
Like baby A, exactly. An abandoned preterm infant with severe BPD and failure to thrive on formula. After PDHM was prescribed for home use, baby A significantly gained weight, had no hospitalizations, and even showed surprising vision development. Remarkable outcomes.
What other scenarios can it help with? It seems quite versatile.
It is. Post-surgical nutrition is another key area essential for infants recovering from intestinal surgery, like post-NEA or cardiac, kidney, and bowel surgeries. It provides immunological support, promoting immune system development, and can help with conditions like IgA deficiency in older children or even adults.
IgA deficiency, interesting.
Yeah. And a crucial application, especially relevant for IBCLC supporting mothers, is bridging milk.
Bridging milk.
Yeah, it's provided in the early weeks, maybe in the hospital or post-discharge, to families while the mother's own milk supply is building to meet the baby's needs. It helps ensure consistent human milk feeding until the mother's own supply is adequate. Think of baby C, a late preterm infant with feeding difficulties, silent aspiration, whose mother developed mastitis. PDHM was used in the hospital and at home as a bridge, supporting continued human milk feeding despite all those challenges.
That's a really practical application.
Yeah.
Now, what about the impact on breastfeeding rates? That's always a big question, maybe even a concern for IBCLCs. Does the availability of donor milk help or hinder a mother's own breastfeeding journey?
That's a really important question, and the research shows somewhat mixed effects, actually. Some studies found that access to PDHM in NICUs significantly increased exclusive breastfeeding rates in the hospital. Others noted reduced formula feeding, which is good, but maybe no significant change in actual breastfeeding rates at discharge.
So what's the key takeaway?
The key takeaway, consistently, is that effective breastfeeding support provided concurrently with PDHM use is crucial for positive outcomes. It shouldn't be seen as a replacement for the mother's milk or support for her lactation, but as a complement, a tool to reach the goal of human milk feeding.
Right. If we connect this back to the bigger picture, you mentioned the financial argument. It sounds incredibly compelling. Not just health outcomes, but real cost savings.
It really is. The economic impact is substantial, and you can make a strong case for it. Studies consistently demonstrate cost effectiveness. We mentioned the estimate of saving roughly $11 for every $1 spent on nonprofit donor milk.
Right.
And for those very low birth weight infants. An exclusively human milk diet, including donor milk, can lead to a shorter NICU stay and significantly lower total hospital costs. We're talking a median cost difference of approximately $15,555 less per infant compared to those fed formula.
$15,000 per baby, that's huge.
It's a huge difference. It impacts hospital budgets, insurance costs, and potentially long-term healthcare costs for those children. It's a fiscally responsible approach.
Okay, now let's navigate some of the challenges. It's not all straightforward. Let's talk limitations and ethical considerations. Availability can certainly be a barrier, right?
Indeed. Access to PDHM is often restricted by the sheer availability of donor milk. Banks rely completely on a well-informed public and supportive healthcare system to identify and screen an adequate number of donors. When supplies are limited, those vulnerable, high-risk infants may face increased morbidity and mortality. It's a supply and demand issue.
And access isn't equal everywhere.
No. In most countries, PDHM is available only in inpatient hospital settings. North America is a bit different, often dispensing for home use too. But even here, a significant barrier remains simply the lack of awareness among healthcare providers and families. Plus, there are often racial, educational, and geographic disparities that limit equitable access. Not everyone knows about it or can easily get it.
And then there's the cost and insurance coverage, which can also be a hurdle for families. You mentioned processing fees.
Right. Milk banks charge that processing fee, typically ranging from $3.75 to $6 per ounce in 2023, plus shipping. This fee is essential to partially cover the significant expenses: screening donors, processing the milk, dispensing it, all the meticulous record keeping. And it's really important to clarify for families and providers. This fee is not payment for the milk itself, it's for the safety and processing services.
But insurance doesn't always cover it.
Coverage is variable, unfortunately. In the United States, insurance coverage for PDHM through Medicaid or commercial plans varies significantly state by state. And post-discharge community use often has very limited coverage in both the U.S. and Canada. To their credit, many HMBNA banks provide charitable care to address this financial barrier and ensure access for those most in need, but it's not a perfect system.
This brings us to a really tricky area, the ethical debate. For-profit versus non-profit milk banking. So what does this all mean for the values that underpin human milk donation? It raises some really crucial ethical questions about commodification, equitable access, especially when you consider models that pay donors or prioritize specialty products.
That's right. It's a critical discussion with major implications. In the nonprofit model, like HMBNAs, donors sign a consent form acknowledging they will not be paid for their milk or their efforts. It's a donation. This model prioritizes the safety and accessibility of donor milk for direct medical need, with any unusable milk typically going to research.
And the for-profit model.
The for-profit model raises significant ethical questions. In this scenario, milk can become a commodity. This could potentially create pressure on donor mothers to provide specific volumes, maybe regardless of their own infant's needs, or even diverting milk away from direct infant feeding because it's more profitable elsewhere.
Where else would it go?
There's concern it could reduce the overall availability of donated milk for direct feeding by channeling it towards the production of specialty products like human milk fortifiers made from human milk, or even research into artificial breast milk from mammary cells or yeast. These are often far more financially lucrative than selling the milk directly. Now, some for-profit companies like Prolacta and Metalac do ensure high quality and sterility standards, but their often significantly higher cost can further restrict access, especially for vulnerable populations, potentially creating a two-tiered system based on ability to pay. It's a complex ethical landscape.
Definitely something for IBCLCs to be aware of. Okay, let's delve back into the processing effects, specifically on human milk components. This is detailed, need-to-know info for the exam. We talked about Holder pasteurization, 62.5 degrees C for 30 minutes. What precisely happens at a molecular level? What gets reduced?
Okay, let's break it down. Holder pasteurization, while crucial for safety, does result in some nutrient changes. It leads to reductions in water-soluble vitamins, especially vitamin C, reduced by up to 35%, thiamine, maybe 25%, biotin, up to 10%.
What about other vitamins?
Good news there. Vitamins A, D, E, B2, B6, choline, niacin, and pantothenic acid are barely affected, which is great.
Okay. And proteins and enzymes?
Some specific proteins and enzymatic activity are reduced. For example, about a 23.7% loss of lysozyme, a pretty significant 56.8% loss of lactoferrin, and about a 34% loss of IgG. Enzymatic activity is definitely impacted.
But the big one, IgA.
Crucially, immunoglobulin A, IgA, generally shows no significant loss. That's key. The ability to bind folic acid is also reduced.
And fats.
Lipids. Fat content can be affected by the freezing and thawing process itself, but generally saccharides and overall lipid content are retained fairly well by Holder pasteurization. The structure of fat globules can be damaged, though, which allows lipases greater access.
So
Overall, while some components are definitely affected, the milk retains many, many beneficial properties. And it's worth noting, variability in research results often relates to different testing protocols used in studies and improvements in modern pasteurizers over time.
Are there other processing methods or storage effects we should be aware of beyond Holder?
Yes, a few key ones. While holder is the standard, high temperature short time, or HTST, pasteurization thinks 72 degrees C for 15-16 seconds is being researched. It's effective in eliminating bacteria and viruses and may preserve more nutrients like B vitamins, vitamin C, lactoferrin, and IgA. So it's a promising area for future development.
Interesting. What about freeze drying?
Lyophilization, or freeze drying, is used to concentrate nutrients, for example, in human milk fortifiers like those made by Prolacta. But this process can also lead to a decrease in total lymphocyte count and immunoglobulin concentrations.
Okay. And just the impact of simple freezing, like for home storage before donation or for a mother's own milk.
Right. Freezing generally preserves milk well for longer periods. Standard home freezers that net is 18 degrees C or pneumatic zero point 0.4 degrees in AVR allow storage for up to 6 months safely. However, milk stored in a refrigerator freezer compartment, especially one with an auto defrost cycle, should probably only be kept for about 1 month. Those repeated freeze-thaw cycles, even minor ones, can alter energy content and separate the fat.
What about deep freezing, like in labs?
Deep freezing at -80 degrees C actually significantly decreases energy content from fat and carbohydrates, surprisingly. It's generally not recommended for long-term storage of milk intended for feeding. And remember, freezing slows, but does not completely inactivate all enzymatic activity like lipase.
And refrigeration, short term.
Freshly expressed human milk maintains its antibacterial activity for several days when refrigerated. Bacterial counts in refrigerated milk tend to decrease over time because of the milk's own inhibitory factors. But for preterm or ill infants, the optimal storage guideline is to freeze any milk not used within 48 hours. This better preserves immunological properties and slows down that enzyme activity compared to longer refrigeration. This really highlights a critical point for IBCLCs. While processing like pasteurization ensures safety, it's always a trade-off, a balance between pathogen destruction and nutrient retention. Understanding these nuances is vital when you counsel families, helping them have realistic expectations for donated milk's nutritional and immunological profile compared to fresh, mother's own milk. It's still incredibly beneficial, absolutely, but it's not identical.
Now let's shift our focus directly to the IBCLC's critical role in human milk banking and advocacy. You, listening in, have a vital part to play in promoting truly informed decision-making for families.
Absolute crucial. IBCACs are often the front line. You have a key role in ensuring that parents, especially in healthcare settings, receive comprehensive, unbiased information on the availability of pasteurized donor human milk, PDHM, as a feeding option when their own milk is insufficient or unavailable. This empowers them to make fully informed choices for their infants.
It's really an ethical imperative, isn't it?
It is. To reinforce the compelling evidence that human milk is the most appropriate nutrition and immunologic protection, particularly for preterm and sick infants, and that not providing human milk when needed presents a clear risk. Your advocacy here, just presenting the facts, is paramount.
And it's not just about providing the donor milk, but simultaneously supporting the mother's own lactation journey. How do IBCLCs ensure that balance? It seems potentially tricky.
It can seem tricky, but the principle is clear. PDHM is primarily provided to complement a mother's efforts to provide her own milk. It serves as that bridge we talked about while her supply is building or when there's a temporary medical need. So IBCLCs should advocate for hospital policies that actively support establishing lactation and breastfeeding concurrently with PDHM provision. They aren't mutually exclusive.
So advocating for pumping support, skin to skin.
All of it. Advocate for and provide effective breastfeeding support in units where PDHM is used. We know this has been linked to increased human milk consumption overall, including more of the mother's own milk and higher breastfeeding rates at discharge. It's about supporting the overarching goal of human milk feeding, however that looks for each family.
Education and awareness are significant components of your role then. Bridging knowledge gaps among both healthcare providers and families seems key, as we discussed earlier. That can be a major barrier.
It's a huge barrier. Honestly, sometimes the biggest barrier to donor milk availability and use is simply a lack of awareness and education among healthcare providers themselves. IBCLCs can play a key role in educating medical staff, nurses, doctors, dietitians on its benefits, indications, and proper use. And of course, informing families directly, ensuring they are aware of and understand the benefits and availability of banked milk, helping them make those critical decisions for their babies without pressure.
What about navigating policies and referrals as an IBCLC? What do you need to know?
It's essential for IBCLCs to be aware of any applicable federal, state, or provincial regulations and laws governing donor milk banking where you practice. It varies. For example, California, Maryland, New York, and Texas have specific health facility regulations that align with HMBNA standards. Know your local context.
And prescriptions.
Yes. You need to understand that PDHM generally requires a prescribing healthcare provider's order for ongoing use. Although some HMBNA banks may dispense a small amount, maybe up to 40 ounces, for emergency use without a prescription, but that's limited. And finally, advocacy. IBCLCs are vital advocates for public policies and insurance coverage that increase access to PDHM for all infants who need it, regardless of their family's ability to pay. It's about pushing for equitable access.
Now, let's move to a crucial distinction, one that really highlights the immense value of formal milk banking, and one IBCLCs absolutely need to understand to protect infant health. The landscape of formal versus informal milk sharing. We've talked extensively about the formal HMBNA model. Let's quickly recap its rigorous safety net.
Okay, the HMBNA model provides a truly rigorous, multi-layered safety net designed to minimize risks as much as humanly possible. This includes comprehensive donor screening, verbal, written, detailed medical history verification, and that mandatory serological testing for infectious diseases, HIV, hepatitis, syphilis, HTLV, often CMV.
Right.
Donors get strict instructions for hygienic collection and frozen storage at home. The milk is then transported under controlled conditions, thawed carefully, pooled from multiple donors for standardization, and subjected to holder pasteurization 62.5 degrees C for 30 minutes to inactivate bacteria and viruses.
Fine, I'll check.
That final bacteriological screen on each batch before it's released, plus meticulous records, mock recalls, regular accreditation, it's a whole system. And remember, that nonprofit mission, donors aren't paid, fees cover processing costs, prioritizing medical need, and accessibility. So for your exam, remember this definition. Pasteurized donor human milk, PDHM, is human milk that has undergone holder pasteurization from meticulously screened donors following strict guidelines and tested for safety. That's the gold standard.
Okay, now let's draw that sharp contrast. This highlights the immense value of formal milk banking, the glaring difference between its rigorous safety net and the almost, well, Wild West seems appropriate, of informal sharing, where the burden of risk falls squarely on the recipient family. Let's define informal milk sharing first.
Right. Informal milk sharing is simply the practice of obtaining human milk directly from other mothers, completely outside of a recognized, regulated milk bank. This could be through friends, family, neighbors, or increasingly through online platforms. Wet nursing, breastfeeding another's child directly is the historical and ongoing form of direct sharing.
And the safety concerns are the big issue here.
They are the primary differentiator and the reason for caution. There's no guaranteed health or lifestyle screening of donors. And critically, absolutely no mandatory serological testing for infectious diseases. Remember that HMBNA study finding 3.3% of potential donors tested positive for things like syphilis, hepatitis B, C, HTLV, or HIV.
Yeah.
Those diseases could theoretically be transmitted via raw, unpasteurized, unscreened milk.
And without the processing we just detailed for formal banks, the risks are just amplified, right? It's raw milk.
Absolutely. The milk is typically unpasteurized. That means any pathogens present could be normal skin flora, could be potentially pathogenic organisms like Staphylococcus aureus or Klebsiella are not inactivated. Human milk, while amazing, is an excellent growth medium for bacteria if it's not handled or stored with perfect hygiene.
And contamination isn't the only risk.
No. There's also a risk of adulteration. Contamination during collection, handling, or storage due to poor hygiene is one thing. But there's also the potential for the milk to be intentionally altered, maybe watered down to increase volume if someone is selling it, for instance.
Oh, wow.
Or it could contain medications, drugs, alcohol, or herbal preparations from the donor that could be harmful to the recipient infant. When milk is shared between strangers, especially via the internet, it's virtually impossible to define the true safety risk. There's just no way for recipients to verify the donor's health, their collection practices, or the milk's quality. It puts the recipient family at significant unknown risk.
So those internet platforms that facilitate sharing eats on feets, human milk, for human babies, even if they say they don't condone selling, and those that do permit buying, selling, or wet nurse listings, like only the breast, these all fall into the informal category and carry these significant risks.
Yes, exactly. All of those fall under informal milk sharing. And it's why official regulatory bodies like the US FDA and Health Canada have issued strong cautionary statements about the risks, potential disease spread, contamination, adulteration.
So what's the IBCLC's role here? You can't recommend it.
No, active involvement of healthcare providers, including IBCLCs, in facilitating an informal exchange of milk raises significant ethical and liability questions. It's not appropriate professionally. Your professional role is to provide comprehensive, evidence-based information to enable the mother to make her own informed choice. That includes clearly outlining the inherent serious risks of unregulated milk sharing alongside the benefits and safety protocols of formal milk banking. You educate and empower the parent to weigh the risks and benefits. You don't facilitate a potentially unsafe practice.
That's a very clear line. Okay, let's address some practical considerations and common misconceptions that IBCLCs will definitely encounter in their practice. First up, microwaving human milk. Does this still come up?
Size, yes, it still comes up sometimes. And the advice needs to be crystal clear. Absolutely advise against microwaving human milk. Just don't do it.
Why not?
Two main reasons. First, it can create dangerous hot spots that can severely burn an infant's mouth and throat. Microwaves heat unevenly. Second, and maybe less known but equally important, it significantly destroys anti-infective properties, things like lysozyme, total IgA, specific IgA to E. coli. It reduces water-soluble vitamins like vitamin C, and it can even increase bacterial growth in some circumstances. There's really no benefit, only risk. Warm it gently in warm water.
Good reminder. How can IBCLCs help optimize milk expression and handling for mothers, whether they're donating or just building their own supply for their baby?
Several key things. First, emphasize that every mother should be taught how to hand express milk.
Hand express, not just pumping.
Yes. Early hand expression, especially for colostrum, has been shown to increase breastfeeding rates later on. Plus, it's a fundamental skill for managing engorgement or plug ducts, especially if a pump isn't available or working. It's empowering.
Oh, and for pumping.
For pumping, discuss the role of FDA regulation breast pumps are medical devices, and adverse events should be reported. Highlight the efficiency of full-size electric pumps, especially double collecting systems. They enhance production and save valuable time for mothers. Advise against using older models that might lack safety features, like preventing milk backup into the motor or those that are difficult to clean thoroughly.
Are there pumps to specifically avoid?
Yes. Explicitly caution against the use of those old bicycle horn-style manual pumps that could be traumatic to breast tissue and are hard to clean. And also against nesty cups or similar devices sometimes used to passively collect milk that drips or leaks between feedings or from the other breast during feeding pumping.
Why not those? Seems efficient.
They're associated with really high rates of bacterial contamination because the milk sits at skin temperature for a while. Drip milk collected this way is generally not suitable for donation and questionable even for a healthy term baby.
Good to know. What about initiating pumping for pump-dependent moms?
Timing is key. For pump-dependent mothers, like those with babies in the NICU, expression should ideally start within 1 hour of birth and definitely within 6 hours postpartum. This is crucial for establishing milk production and providing that early oral immune therapy with colostrum. The goal is for parents to be producing around 500 milliliters per day by day 4 postpartum to avoid the risk of long-term inadequate supply. Early and effective initiation is critical.
What about the sour milk phenomenon some mothers encounter with their frozen milk? That soapy or metallic smell can be quite alarming.
It can be, but you can definitely reassure mothers and dispel the myth. That rancid or soapy smell in thawed, previously frozen human milk is typically not due to bacterial contamination. It's usually due to natural lipid breakdown by the enzyme lipase. Some women just naturally have higher lipase activity in their milk. Cultures of such milk are often completely unremarkable for bacterial growth.
Is there anything they can do about it if the baby refuses it?
Yes, sometimes. A mitigation strategy is to scald the milk. This means heating it gently on the stovetop to just below boiling until you see little bubbles around the edge immediately after expression. Then rapidly cool it and freeze it. This needs to be done before the smell develops. It can sometimes inactivate the lipase and prevent the issue. However, scalding will not improve the taste or smell of milk that has already turned rancid, and it does reduce some nutrients, so it's a trade-off.
Okay, that's helpful. And just to reiterate our earlier point on cost effectiveness, because it's such a strong argument for advocacy.
Yes, absolutely. It bears repeating. Despite those initial processing fees for PDHM, the overall long-term financial benefits for healthcare systems from reduced infant morbidities, especially the huge cost of treating NEC, make a human milk-based diet highly cost-effective compared to formula for vulnerable infants. It's a win-win. Better health outcomes and economic sustainability. It's a sound investment in infant health.
Okay, now let's put your knowledge to the test. We've got 10 IBCLC style case-based multiple choice questions designed to help you apply what we've unpacked today. Ready?
Let's do it. Remember, these questions are designed to challenge your application and understanding, not just simple recall. Think about the why behind each answer and why the distractors might seem plausible but are ultimately incorrect.
Donor exclusion criteria application.
All right, question 1. A prospective milk donor contacts an HMBNA milk bank. She's 4 months postpartum, healthy, her baby's thriving. During screening, she reveals she regularly takes a prescribed antidepressant and occasionally uses CBD oil for anxiety. Based on HMBNA guidelines, which of these factors would most likely lead to her deferral from donating milk? A, her baby's age of 4 months. B, her history of anxiety. C, her regular use of a prescribed antidepressant. D, her occasional use of CBD oil. What do you think?
Okay, thinking through the criteria. The correct answer here is C, her regular use of a prescribed antidepressant. The guidelines explicitly state that regular use of systemic prescriptions is a reason for exclusion, with only very specific exceptions. Antidepressants generally fall under this.
Right. Why not the others?
Well, A, her baby's age, 4 months, is fine. B, a history of anxiety itself isn't an exclusion unless it involves disqualifying medications. And D, occasional CBD oil. While substance use is screened, the guidelines are most explicit about regular use of prescriptions, illegal drugs, tobacco, and significant alcohol. The antidepressant is that clears deferral based on the info given.
Holder pasteurization principles.
Question 2. A new technician at a human milk bank is setting up a batch for Holder pasteurization. She places the control bottle on the edge of the shaking water bath closest to the heating element. What specific aspect of the HMBNA Holder pasteurization protocol did the technician overlook? A, the milk temperature must reach 72 degrees CDP. The pasteurization time should be only 15 seconds. C, the control bottle should be positioned centrally among the treated aliquots. D, the milk should not be rapidly cooled after heating. What's the error here?
The error, and the correct answer, is C. The control bottle should be positioned centrally among the treated aliquots. HMBNA guidelines are very specific about this. Placing it centrally ensures an accurate, representative temperature reading for the entire batch. Putting it on the edge, especially near the heat source, could give a false high reading or just not reflect the core temperature.
And the others are wrong because
A and B describe HTST, high temperature short time, pasteurization, not Holder, which is 62.5 degrees C for 30 minutes. And D is incorrect. Rapid cooling is a required step in Holder pasteurization.
benefits of PDHM for preterm infants.
Question 3. A 28-week premature infant in the NICU is struggling with feeding tolerance. Mom's milk supply isn't fully established yet. The team discusses introducing pasteurized donor human milk, PDHM. Based on the research we discussed, which is the most significant benefit consistently anticipated from providing PDHM compared to formula for this infant? A, guaranteed increased weight gain and head growth. B, reduced risk of necrotizing enterocolitis, NECC. Elimination of all risk of infection. D, complete preservation of all original immunological properties, which is the big one.
The big one, the most significant and consistently evidenced benefit is B, reduced risk of necrotizing enterocolitis. The source material and the broader research consistently points to NEC reduction as a primary life-saving advantage of human milk, including PDHM for preemies.
What about the others?
A, weight gain isn't guaranteed to be faster than formula initially, though the quality of growth might differ. C, PDHM reduces infection risk but doesn't eliminate it entirely. And D, pasteurization, as we discussed, reduces some immunological properties, though key ones like IgA remain. So B is the strongest, most consistent claim.
Distinguishing formal versus informal milk sharing.
Question 4. A new mother is looking for breast milk for her adopted infant. A friend suggests an online milk sharing group. Her lactation consultant recommends contacting an HMBNA milk bank. What is the primary reason the lactation consultant would recommend the HMBNA bank over the online group for safety? A, HMBNA banks always provide milk for free, unlike informal sharing. B, HMBNA banks guarantee higher fat content in their milk. C, HMBNA banks perform comprehensive donor screening and pasteurization of the milk. D. HMBNA banks deliver milk faster than informal methods. Primary safety reason.
The primary safety reason is absolutely C. HMBNA banks perform comprehensive donor screening and pasteurization of the milk. That multi-layered safety process screening donors for health and lifestyle, testing their blood, and pasteurizing the milk to kill pathogens is the core difference and the key safety advantage over informal sharing, where none of that is guaranteed.
And the others.
A is wrong. Banks charge processing fees. B isn't the primary safety reason, nor is it guaranteed universally. D isn't necessarily true and relevant to the core safety issue compared to screening and pasteurization.
Milk storage and handling by donors.
Question 5. A donor is storing her expressed milk for donation to an HMBNA bank. She has several types of containers available at home. Which storage container is preferred for preserving the immunologic function of donor milk according to guidelines and research? A. Soft polyethylene bags. B. Sterilized glass containers. C. Hard polycarbonate plastic containers. D. Any clean plastic bottle will suffice, which is best for the good stuff.
The preferred choice for preserving immunologic function is B. Sterilized glass containers. The source explicitly states glass or rigid polypropylene plastic containers are preferred. Glass is inert and doesn't have issues with fat adherence like bags, A, or potential BPA leaching like polycarbonate, C. D is too vague. The type of plastic matters. Glass is generally considered optimal.
IBCLC role in advocating for PDHM.
Question 6. A hospital administrator questions offering PDHM to healthy-term infants with medical needs, like hypoglycemia, suggesting formula is more cost-effective. As an IBCLC, what's the most compelling argument, based on our discussion, to advocate for continuing PDHM in this specific scenario? A. PDHM is always free for recipients, reducing family financial burden. B. PDHM significantly increases the mother's own milk supply. C. PDHM can support parental informed choice and may lead to higher exclusive breastfeeding rates at discharge. D. PDHM is regulated as a food by the FDA, ensuring its safety profile is superior to formula. What's your best argument here?
The most compelling argument in this context is C. PDHM can support parental informed choice and may lead to higher exclusive breastfeeding rates at discharge. The source notes that offering PDHM for medical supplementation, even in term babies, supports parental choice, can positively affect mental health, and might result in higher exclusive breastfeeding rates later. This frames it not just as critical illness treatment, but as support for the human milk feeding goal.
And the others.
A is false, fees. B isn't a direct effect. PDHM is a bridge. Support helps supply. D misrepresents regulation. The argument isn't about FDA status, but about the specific benefits of human milk components over formula for meeting medical needs and supporting breastfeeding goals.
Cost-effectiveness of human milk diet.
Question 7. A hospital is evaluating NICU feeding protocols, comparing the long-term economic impact of an exclusively human milk diet, mom's own plus donor milk, versus a mixed diet with formula for VLBW infants. According to the research, what's the primary economic advantage of the exclusively human milk diet for these tiny babies? A. Human milk is always free, eliminating all feeding costs. B. Decreased length of NICU stay and lower total hospital costs due to reduced NEC. C. Increased insurance reimbursement rates for donor milk. D. Reduced need for specialized feeding equipment. Where's the big saving?
The primary economic advantage, as highlighted in the source, is B. Decreased length of NIC stay and lower total hospital costs due to reduced NEC. Preventing just one case of NEC saves a massive amount. The studies show this translates to shorter stays and lower overall costs, citing that median saving of over $15,000 per infant. That's the main driver.
Why not the others?
A is false. C isn't true. Reimbursement is often a challenge, not an advantage. D isn't mentioned as a primary factor. The saving comes from avoiding costly complications.
Specialized donor milk use.
Question 8. A full-term infant develops chylothorax after cardiac surgery. This condition requires a diet with minimal long-chain fatty acids. Mom is pumping, but more milk is needed as a bridge. What specialized type of human milk would be most appropriate, as described in the source? A. Standard pasteurized donor human milk. B. High-protein targeted pooled donor milk. C. Reduced fat human milk. D. Human milk fortified with bovine protein. What does this baby need?
This baby needs C. Reduced fat human milk. The baby D case study specifically discussed chylothorax being incompatible with long-chain fatty acids and described the milk bank preparing reduced fat human milk. Standard PDHM A and high-protein milk B would still have the fat. Fortifier D doesn't address the fat issue. It requires specific modification of the milk itself.
Impact of freezing on human milk components.
Question 9. A mother stored her milk in a standard freezer, -18 degrees C, for several months. She's worried about how freezing affected it for her healthy, full-term baby. What is a known effect of freezing human milk at -18 degrees C for months, as discussed? A. Complete destruction of all immunological factors. B. Significant increase in lipase activity, leading to a rancid smell. C. Reduction in water-soluble vitamins, such as vitamin C, D. Inactivation of all digestive enzymes. What happens in the freezer?
A known effect is C, reduction in water-soluble vitamins, such as vitamin C. The source mentioned vitamin C is reduced by both heating and freezing storage effects. A is incorrect. Freezing doesn't destroy all immune factors. B is incorrect. Freezing slows lipase. It doesn't increase it. The smell happens after thawing if lipase is still active. D is incorrect. Freezing slows enzymes but doesn't completely inactivate all of them. Vitamin reduction is a documented effect of long-term freezing.
Best practices for pumping and milk collection.
And finally, question 10. A nurse is teaching a new mom how to pump effectively for her hospitalized preterm infant. According to best practices mentioned, which action is most likely to enhance milk production and maximize benefit when pumping for a preterm infant? A. Discarding the first 10 milliliters of milk expressed from each breast. B. Using a bicycle horn-style hand pump for gentle suction. C. Starting expression within 1 hour of birth and using a double-collecting electric pump. D. Storing collected milk in soft plastic bags to maximize volume. Best practice for this mom.
The best practice here is C. Starting expression within 1 hour of birth and using a double-collecting electric pump. The source emphasized early initiation, within 1 to 6 hours, for establishing supply, especially for pump-dependent moms, and it highlighted that double pumping with a good quality electric pump enhances production and saves time.
And the others are bad ideas.
Pretty much. A. Discarding early milk isn't recommended. B. Bicycle horn pumps are specifically cautioned against. D. Soft plastic bags are discouraged for donation storage due to various issues, not preferred. Early, frequent, effective emptying with a good double pump is key. #tag outro.
So wrapping this all up, what does it all mean? We've covered a huge amount today, everything from the historical roots of milk sharing to the rigorous modern science of milk banking, right down to the ethics and the practicalities. We've seen how donor human milk stands as a critical, safe, and evidence-based alternative when a mother's own milk is unavailable, especially for our most vulnerable infants.
And we've truly underscored the robust safety measures of formal milk banks, that rigorous donor screening, the holder pasteurization, the stringent quality control, meticulous record keeping. It's a whole system built on safety. We also touched upon those complex ethical considerations, especially with the rise of for-profit models, which is something to keep an eye on. This really raises an important question for you, the listener, the future or current IBCLC. How will you leverage this comprehensive knowledge to support families, to champion the incomparable value of human milk in all its forms safely and effectively?
Your role as an IBCLC is just so vital. Empowering families with informed choices, advocating for human milk as the optimal nutrition, guiding them to safe and appropriate resources like HMBNA banks, and understanding those crucial distinctions between formal milk banking and informal milk sharing is absolutely paramount to protecting infant health and ensuring the best possible outcomes. You have to be able to explain the risks and benefits clearly. So here's a final thought to leave you with. As we continue to understand the profound complexities of human milk, how might milk banking evolve further? How can we work towards meeting the needs of every infant who could benefit, ensuring that the highest attainable standard of health truly becomes a universal right, not dependent on geography or ability to pay?
Something to ponder.
Definitely. Thank you for diving deep with us today on The Deep Dive.